I'm Amanda Burgess, editor of JourneyWoman, and your host for this special event that is part of our ongoing Travel Ready series. Tonight, we prepare you for your current and future travels with a deep dive into travel mindset. There's a lot to navigate in the new world order of travel, and mindset is key to doing so successfully. For anyone who's just joined, if you can just mute yourselves. There's some noise in the background. Thanks, everyone. I'll introduce you to tonight's guest in a moment, but first a land acknowledgement, followed by some quick notes on how tonight will run. At JourneyWoman, we strive to be a place where all feel welcome. We are committed to creating the safest place possible, with the intention of helping to unearth the true value of everyone who joins this community. We wish to acknowledge that the land we are standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, and we wish to acknowledge and thank the first peoples of this territory and other indigenous peoples for sharing this land so that we may continue our work today. Now, a couple of quick notes on how tonight will run. If you can post your questions in the chat whenever you think of them, I'll address them as we go along. And I'll also leave 10 minutes open at the end of the session to ensure that you have all of your questions answered. With that, let's get into it, shall we? Joining me on the show tonight is Debbie Phillips, the inspiring founder of Women on Fire and a pioneer in the world of executive and life coaching. She's an author, a speaker, and a producer known for her work in transforming women's lives. She's also a keynote speaker at our Women's Travel Wisdom event in California this October, an event co-produced by JourneyWoman and Girls Guide to Paris. For those of you who haven't yet heard about the signature event, I'll pop a link in the chat and you can check it out. Now, Debbie, can you tell our audience a little bit more about you, your work as a life coach, and who you are as a traveler? Oh, Debbie, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate that. And also, I just want to say hi and thank you to Carolyn Ray as well, our two women from JourneyWoman, and Donnie Bilo, who is from Girls Guide to Paris, who are sponsoring the retreat. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to see everybody on here. Most of you I've not met. I see I have a soul sister here named Debbie Phillips. I love that. So hi to you. The chances of two Debbie Phillipses showing up in one place are usually kind of rare. So anyway, hi, everybody. Really happy to meet you. I am coming to you from Los Angeles. I normally live in Naples, Florida. But for 6 weeks, I am living in Los Angeles because that's part of my travel life. I think the most important thing that I can tell you in answer to Amanda's question is I grew up in a little tiny town in Ohio and never really traveled until I was an adult. And then my work has always taken me to different places. So I've been a newspaper reporter, a governor, and a presidential candidate's press secretary. And then I, at one time, was in business running a television production company. In all those jobs, I went to amazing places and I took note. My very first trip outside of the United States was to India, and which could not be for any of you who've been to India, it was just the world's most magnificent trip to travel because there was no place more different for me at the time than India. So in the 25 years since I've been a coach, travel has always been part of my world. I am a coach with my mission in this world is to help women express their gifts, strengths, and talents. And I happen to think travel is such an important part of that. One of my most important mottos is, if you don't travel, it's like reading only one page of a book. And so I just feel like the growth that comes from travel is so powerful, so exponential that it's just always, since I've been an adult now, been part of my life. So does that answer your question, Miss Amanda?
Sure does. Thank you, Debbie. Now, we all know that the world has changed. The way that we travel and the way that we prepare for it is naturally changing as well. And this is where mindset really comes in. Debbie, I know you've been traveling during the pandemic, as have I. And whereas once we only had to choose a destination, where to stay, how to get there, and buy some insurance, it's so much more than that now. Now we've got the pre and post-trip testing, we've got masks, we've got specialized additional insurance, we've got to make a plan B in case we get COVID wherever we're going. How do you think that these changes in process and the time and labor involved are affecting the traveler's psyche?
Well, what I see as the good news is that is absolutely what you just described, is absolutely what we've all been through these last couple of years. What I'm noticing is that there is some relief. We all can see a bit of a horizon here, and it's really pretty exciting. I know Donnie just put out something that in France you just need to be vaccinated, but there's no requirement now that you have a negative COVID test. And so for all of us, I think the key word here is let's just be smart. I mean, last summer, I took 12 Women on Fire members to France with Donnie Bilo of Girls Guide to Paris. We were entering the country at a time when they started to open up. And honestly, we were all just very smart. We masked up. Everybody was vaccinated. We followed the rules in the country. And again, this was last summer, really before Omicron. And it was fine. No one got COVID. We were all fine. So I think that the situation is really opening up. I know that, just traveling does bring up a lot of fear with people, but I do think that one of the reasons it's important to travel together is because we can help each other figure out where our fears are, what is or isn't working, and ameliorate those, because there's nothing, there's so much power in the travel of women together.
Now, as a coach, mindset is your bread and butter, and it's a muscle that you work every day. How do you get yourself mindset ready for travel?
Well, because I've traveled so much, and because I'm a big believer in the power of daily practices, and I believe daily practices keep us centered. So I would just be curious, by show of hands, of anybody who is on, who is on video right now, how many of you have daily practices? Whether that means you take 1 minute to read something inspirational, or you do yoga, or you work out, or great. I see some hands raised. So the importance of getting centered each day, whether it's 1 minute or 20 minutes, in whatever form you do that fills your heart and soul, is so incredibly powerful. I extrapolate that to travel. So I have all these funny little rituals around travel, meaning that I never leave my house. So something else is important for you to know. I had the world's best husband and partner for 20 years, and he died 3 years ago. And it was incredibly sad. And we traveled both together and separately a lot, and we had rituals together. I've continued those rituals and even tweaked them for myself. But one thing Rob and I used to do, and I still do it to this day, is before I leave the house, so before I left Florida for California, I literally fist bump. Now I fist bump myself. Rob and I used to fist bump each other and imagine what it's going to be like to walk back into that space. Meaning, I have great expectations in a very positive vein about I'm going to meet new people, I'm going to eat new food, I'm going to have new experiences. I'm going to be a changed person when I walk back into my door. So that's just a little mindset hack around, have rituals for yourself. If nothing else, just write out the question, what is it I hope to gain by this trip? Whether you're going abroad or whether you're going someplace in the US. It's just part of being powerfully mindful. And we all know that we can create a lot of our own experiences, and then it allows us to handle, just simply by our mindset, and then it allows us to handle when things come up, that are rough or unexpected.
And how do you think women can start to make these little rituals a habit so that it stops feeling awkward or silly to them, like it does at the beginning when you start to put these things in place?
Right. Well, there's all kinds of literature available around, it takes anywhere from 6 weeks to a couple of months to enforce the habit. But I always say that daily choices matter. And so what is one little thing you could do every day that gets you in the mindset of, usually it's around, really just caring for ourselves? What fills up your tank every day? What's one little thing that you can do filling up your tank? That creates a habit. And I don't know how many of you, raise your hand or share in the chat stream. How many of you keep a travel journal? Because I do think that having a journal is another great place to just, if you're afraid, you can write out, I want to make this trip, but here's what I'm afraid of, or, here's what I hope to get on this trip. So really, in answer to your question, Amanda, daily habits, small ones, if you just do it consistently, it can easily become a habit. And I'm actually lazy, and I like things really simple. And I just find that just little things of focused attention on, for instance, currently I'm actually paying attention just to the way that I walk. Whoops, I'm sorry. I have, is my audio okay?
Okay.
So currently, I was greatly inspired. Recently, many of you may know that the Vietnamese Zen monk Thich Nhat Hanh died, and there was a lot of stuff available around his practices. And one of his practices is when he walks, he pretends he's kissing the earth. How beautiful is that? And so since I arrived in California, I said to myself, I'm going to make it a daily practice that at least when I'm walking, at least one time when I'm walking, I'm going to think about I'm kissing the earth. I have a little apartment downtown, Culver City. I walk everywhere. And so it's just in my mind now. And I've really developed the habit. The minute I get out on the street, I'm like, okay, I just want to pretend I'm kissing the earth for a minute. So that's how a daily habit gets started. Should be something you want to do. Lifts you up.
Amazing. I love
There
that.
we go.
Can you tell me about a time when you
Only
had to work
250
hard
minutes
to
we've
make
made. Yeah.
a mindset that wasn't serving you while you were traveling?
No, I don't think so.
Oops, I'm sorry. I think there's some, I'm sorry, Amanda, I just need you to,
Couple people.
okay.
Can you tell me a time when you were traveling, you had to shake a mindset that wasn't serving you, or maybe when you had to try and shake someone else that you were traveling with out of mindset that wasn't serving them?
Yeah. I'll tell you two very quickly. The first one is when I've traveled, because I've had a pretty busy life. And when I travel, sometimes it's the first time that I can relax a little bit. And I've had episodes where I got in touch with my grief. So it might be someone, a beloved, obviously it's always a beloved person. And so in terms of the mindset, I've just given myself grace to go ahead and grieve. I've had some extraordinary, almost like supernatural things happen when I've been in other countries. I was in Chile and I was trying to figure out, I was grieving the loss of a very beloved mother figure in my life. And I was trying to figure out money, and I looked up, it was in a cafe. I was sitting at a table by myself, and I was figuring out the money, and I looked up, and there was a woman sitting at my table, and she showed me the money to give to the wait person. And I was so shocked because this woman was there and she didn't speak English, and I obviously didn't speak Spanish. And so I dealt with the wait person, and then I looked back and the woman was gone. So it was almost like a supernatural experience. And it led me, obviously I deeply was weeping. So the situations like that have happened to me traveling. And I now have had it enough that I'm like, that's just the world taking care of me. I don't know what spiritual, supernatural thing that is. So that's one thing. The second part of your question, to shake up my mindset that okay, I just need to grieve. I just need to be, and it doesn't matter that what country I'm in, I need to allow myself to have those feelings. I remember that instance. I went back, I skipped dinner, and I went to bed because I really just needed to be alone. So that was a moment that I shook things up. In terms of one of the things, and I know all of you have seen bad behavior when you're traveling, and it just happens to be a real sticky wicket for me. I really cannot stand other people abusing other people. And I had an episode about 5 years ago in LaGuardia where a woman was screaming at we were side by side. I was with an agent, and she was with an agent beside me, screaming at the agent, berating her, belittling her. And I lost it. And I went up to her and I said, stop right now. She's trying to help you and you are being incredibly rude. And the woman looked at me. I don't know, she could have punched me, but she looked at me, and to her credit, she started crying. She hugged me and she said, "I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you. Thank you for stopping me." So that's a pretty dramatic, and there was a lot more that came from that. But what I would say is sometimes when you're traveling, just pay attention, because there's the positive corollary of that. Sometimes you see somebody who's alone, and just beginning to talk with them can be a way to fill your own tank. In the old days of travel, everybody used to talk to each other. Now everybody stays in their silo, but you paying attention to what's going on around you and what little kids playing on the floor that you can just smile at, and it fills your tank. I find I feel safer when I'm connecting with people. And then obviously you have to be very careful if you intervene in somebody's bad behavior, but I also don't think people should be allowed to get away with really bad behavior when people are traveling, because it's frightening.
Absolutely. Now you touched on this.
Hence people carrying duct tape now. I don't. But
you touched on this a little bit in your answer to the previous question, but how can travelers start to adopt a more open, positive mindset to help them navigate the new world of travel?
Yeah, I think just to be curious. I mean, think about travel. You're out of your normal environment. You are away from home. Just be curious. Be curious about everything and just pay attention. And so I think that's how to be mindful. If you're curious, it's going to lead to all kinds of things. So, you've all heard of the beginner's mind. I'm traveling, I'm going on this adventure, whether it's to Chicago or to Shanghai. It's an adventure, and I'm going to be curious. Who am I going to meet? Who am I going to, what am I going to witness? What am I going to see? Oh, wow, they do things differently here. The other day I was in the US, so maybe it was Atlanta or something, and they have all new water faucets now. There's like soap, water, and a dryer all at one sink. And I was like so excited. I was like, wow. And I couldn't figure out, I was like, what are all these three things? Oh, and I couldn't find a paper towel. And then I was like, oh, it's now a dryer. And so it's like, oh, that was so cool. I found, I was curious and didn't have a paper towel, and I figured it out. So there's these new things in the world. Pay attention.
Now, I think part of the challenge is that we all remember how travel used to be, and it can be really tough to accept the new world order, even knowing that change is natural and necessary. I think back to after 9/11, when all the increased security and the delays that came with it made us all a little bit more frustrated. So how can travelers learn to accept that travel will never be the same again and move forward in a more positive way?
Right. Well, that's the preparation, that you get yourself ready and you make, you declare it. You simply say, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be curious. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I have trained my mind. I've traveled so much in my career and in my life now as an adult that every time I know my plane is delayed, I'm like, ooh, what's going to happen? am I going to meet somebody I wouldn't have met? Because I now have enough experience to know that I have met people that I would never have met had I not had the delay. And some of them have been pretty delicious experiences. So it's, again, just training yourself in your attitude. There's nothing you can do about a delay. There's nothing you can do about a delay, whether you're on the TSA line or whatever. And think about those people who are constantly, running all that stuff through. Imagine their pressure if they let something, harmful through, and yet everybody's, wanting hurry up. But, I am constantly, and again, I learned this from Marianne Williamson years ago, and this can be part of your mind, a mindset that you develop, is that taking your time, because you're in the airport anyway, or you're in the train station, or you're wherever you are, taking your time, looking around in those situations where things don't, get delayed. I look at the workers, and I do the Marianne Williamson thing, and I just go, the love in me sees the love in you. And then that heals me, as well as hopefully it sends some message to them. Now, I just say it silently. I'm not on the line going, oh, the love in me feels the love in you. But it's powerful, lock eyes with the person who, hands you the bin, and, you can silently bless them. It's powerful, and so, like I said, I just don't get upset about anything because I've made up my mind. I can't control it. And so let's enjoy it.
Now, last time I interviewed you, you told me about one of your delicious experiences that came from a delay. Can you tell everyone else that?
Is it about the guy I met?
Yes.
I'll tell you very quickly. If anybody's up for a guy story. So my husband I was coming up upon his anniversary, first anniversary of his death. And I was walking through the airport, and I was kind of, I'm kind of doing my thing, but I'm also like, okay, I'm feeling sad for myself. I'm depressed. I'm like, I miss my husband. And I'm looking around, I'm like, and there's not even anybody in the airport that I would like. I don't think I would want any of these people as a partner. So it was super crowded, and I leaned up against a wall thinking this. And the next thing I know, shoulder to shoulder, like touching my shoulder, this guy starts talking to me, and I look up, and he was handsome, he was smart, he was really adorable. And so long story short, I ended up and had dinner with him, and it was amazing. And he and I were both from Columbus, Ohio. He now lived in San Francisco. I was on my way, someplace, probably California. And so I just took that as, even in that moment of my grief or being sad, like somehow like a magical, handsome, charming guy who bought me dinner. And it was wonderful. And I'm still in touch with, so it was great.
I'll tell the Pierce Brosnan story too.
Oh my God. Okay, you guys. Yeah, this just happened recently. I was a little bit late, but I'm calm, but I was the last person getting on a plane after Thanksgiving. And I sat into my seat, and so this is a little lesson here, because I took note of this of myself. So my calm Zen way got thrown off because Mr. Man sitting in the window, and I was in the aisle, Mr. Man had man-spreaded over to my side. His stuff was over on my side. And so I'm a little, instead of blessing him, I'm a little bit irritated that this guy is, has got his stuff over on my side, and I put my stuff away and sit back. And very, very quickly, I discovered, because the man, I'll shorten the version, the man leans his hand over and says, "Hi, I'm Pierce." And I looked at him, and it was Pierce Brosnan. And so for the next 4 hours, Pierce and I watched a movie together where he showed me all the mistakes in Saving Private Ryan. And we just had a great conversation. He lost his wife I obviously lost my husband. He is married to an amazing woman he very much loves, but it was very charming, 4 hours next to Pierce. So see, you never know. You never know. And I will tell you, afterward, I was like, wow, you started to get all in a Twitter about him having his man spreaded over on your side, which still was not the right thing to do. But it turned out fine. And it reminded me that I just need to always keep my practices, and not just selectively, I need not to lose them.
In a similar vein, let's talk a little bit about patience, because every part of the travel experience now takes so much longer than it used to. So do you have any advice or tips for decreasing frustration and increasing that zenness and calm?
Yeah, I think for each one of you listening, what works for you? Does it work for you to listen to an app? There's so many wonderful apps out there. There's Calm, there's Headspace. There's so many wonderful guided imagery things that, an airport or train station or traveling even in the car is a really good place just to be mindful of that. Just to be mindful also of your breath. And again, as I was just describing to you, you have your practice, then you lose it, then you have it. That's what practice is. So don't feel like, oh, I have to be 100% perfect in this. It's just prepare yourself. It takes patience to travel. And, and you might get some great reward when you're traveling, so that's why the more patient you are, the more that's going to come to you, and whatever you have to do, whatever you've discovered helps you to get into that state. The other thing too is if you're traveling with your family, you're helping them develop the way they're going to travel. So if you're aggressive and anxious, and that's how your kids or the people that you love, that's how they're going to learn to travel. So, I think we all have extra incentive. I know when I travel with people younger than me, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking I want to demonstrate for them how to travel and be safe, and at the same time, develop a sense around this is how you do it when a lot of it's out of your control.
Now, we all know that rapid change breeds confusion and anxiety, and the pandemic has obviously seen plenty of both. So how can travelers start to work their flexibility and adaptability muscles to prepare for this new era of change?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm always about starting small, and I think getting really clear, if you're aware of whatever fear or anxiety you have about travel, get clear about that, even if you just write it down. And then, because a lot of times, I know, and I've done this in the past, I've written down what I'm afraid of, and then I ask myself the percentage of, is that going to happen? So I'm afraid that, I'm afraid to be alone, at a dinner place in Paris. Why am I afraid of that? Well, I'm afraid somebody's going to slip a Mickey in my drink or something. What are the chances of that? Well, probably 1% or less. And so that's the kind of thing we can do to strengthen our muscles. What are we anxious about? What are we concerned about? What is the percentage of that likely to happen? And if the percentage is high, if it's a 50-50, then, the question we ask ourselves is, well, what can I do? Okay, that's 50% is pretty high. So I'm just not going to go to dinner alone. I'll take somebody with me, or I'll sit at the bar and talk to the bartender, or, I'll find other ways to be safe if that's what my fear is. So every little change we make like that actually just strengthens our muscles. So it's just like working out at the gym. Eventually lifting weights is going to work. And eventually, when you think about some of these practices and have the awareness of some of these things and allow yourself, instead of just saying, oh, it's just like too dangerous. Instead of that, it's just breaking it down. What am I really concerned about? And build a model from there. Oh, well, that's not so bad, is usually what happens when we start to break down our fears or concerns.
So I want to talk a little bit more about fear, because even though it seems to be lifting and people are letting go of much of their fear around COVID, it's still swirling in all parts of the travel experience. It's swirling in the decision of whether to travel or not, and all parts of the travel experience when you are traveling. So what are some other tips and strategies you have for managing fear and sort of reclaiming your personal power? Because so many factors are out of our control.
Right. Well, I think to keep your eye on the bigger picture. Travel is really empowering. And I think everybody here wouldn't be here if you haven't already traveled and you know what I'm talking about. It lifts us up. It empowers us. And so sometimes it's just keeping your mind on the bigger picture. Also, just to go back, Amanda, a little bit, I have a very, very close friend who was in Paris a couple of months ago, and on the last day, she and her husband were together, and they were, doing the COVID test, because you had to have the COVID test before you left. She had COVID. So her husband had some big thing he had to do in New York, and so he flew back, and she stayed in Paris another week. And she told me, and she had symptoms, but she went to and everybody who's been to Paris knows the drugstores are amazing there. I take their drugstores over ours any single day. Anyway, she's like, you know what? It turned out to be so great. I had a week by myself, in Paris. I just isolated, but of all places. So the thing that we're afraid of too is we can likely manage that. Whatever it is a fear. But I also think keeping our eye on the bigger picture, and also just, connecting with other people. I think that, and whether you're an introvert, which means, you get your energy from within, or an extrovert, which means you get your energy from other people. I mean, introverts love having one-on-one conversations, connections among and between people, because we haven't been able to have them, are so rich right now. And I'm watching it all around me. I'm experiencing it myself. It feels different. I don't know how many of you have been seeing other people now and are kind of back in the swirl a bit, and what you're experiencing. It is a little bit overwhelming, and I'm kind of a super extrovert, and I'm overwhelmed. But just being with people feels so rich and delicious. And so, I think that's also part of what ameliorates some of the fear, is just the deliciousness of being back together. I know when I was in Paris last summer, and I literally cried because I was walking by myself. I was walking over the Seine to a restaurant that I had dinner by myself. And I literally cried because I had not been I hadn't been on the streets with people. And I teared up because I was like, oh, it just feels so delicious. And then of course, when you're in France, the men especially are like, oh la la. It feels really good.
What about for the introverts out there who, they might want to be around people, since they haven't in so long, and they feel rusty and it's socially awkward? How can they manage that awkwardness, even if it's something that they want?
Yeah. Well, anybody who's an introvert here, you guys can all tell me, but all my beloved introverts really cherish one-on-one conversation. And so I would just be very selective and just know, and again, this is you, if you don't know whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, just think about, when I go to a party, do I leave fulfilled and excited, or do I leave exhausted? If you leave exhausted, you're an introvert, because you need quiet and to go inside to get your energy back. But I would just say, for all of us, and introverts in particular, just be mindful that a little bit is going to go a long way. So maybe just pick one person to have a conversation with, and just limit yourself. But for all of us, because I have been I have seen many more people than I'm used to on this trip in California. And I'm really finding I'm really tired. So I would say my people input is about half now because I'm just so overwhelmed by the energy of it. And I think that's what we're going to find as we all get back out into the world.
Absolutely. So fear and anxiety are really constricting emotions. How can we start to shift from that, smothered place into the more expansive emotion of optimism?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this answers your question, but I also carry with me an energetic, I just call it an energetic self-help toolkit and so one thing, and for those of you, I don't know if there's anybody on here who either studies or practices Asian arts, but if you are, please share, because there is something I learned about 25 years ago that's really helped me. And that is, some of you may have had acupuncture or acupressure or reflexology, that uses the meridians, the energy meridians of your body. And any of you who had this, you know the benefits of that practice. And so there's a practice I use when I travel. There's a practice I use if I'm at home and I'm anxious. And you can literally hold your fingers in a pattern. So if you're worried, so the exercise, this energetic exercise is called worry fast. And worry is your thumb. So if you're worried, you can literally just hold your thumb on your lap and it works the energy meridians in your body. And then you can switch hands. The fast is fear. So if you're afraid, you can just hold, and I've done this many, many times. I've been afraid of something and I'm just like, okay, just hold your finger. The middle finger is anger. So if you're mad about something, you're traveling, you're mad about something, just, nobody really sees you do it. You just, because you can hold it on your lap, but you hold it and then you hold your other one and you'd be really surprised how calming it is. And again, fast is fear, anger, sadness. And so if you're sad, you can hold your ring finger. And if you're tired, you can hold your pinky. And you can hold all of them in sequence if you want. And you'll know because you hold it for a while and then you're like, okay, it feels kind of done. So I say 3 to 5 minutes. And then you just kind of move on just for like a general boost. But that's one way energetically you're actually feeding your body. You're releasing, you're releasing tension in your body. So does that make sense for this question?
I love that.
Worry fast. I mean, it's a big one. You can do it with kids too. It's really great. And they get into it, because they're like, what's my finger? And you go, oh, if you're afraid, you hold this finger.
Now, my next question is, and it might not apply to most Journey women, but we all know people like this. So there are some travelers who are not the heavy planners in their group.
Yeah.
They rely on the planners in their travel circles to do the research, the planning, the contingency planning. But I think we can all agree that COVID has created a new level of personal responsibility when it comes to travel. So how can women who haven't been self-sufficient start to build that muscle?
Yeah, well, I think this comes back to a like, if you like to research things, and so people who tend to do that, that's part of the travel. They really enjoy doing that. Interestingly enough, I don't. And I really love relying on other people who know the territory. Obviously at Women on Fire, Donnie Below has been a friend of mine for 15 years. I've always relied on her. I've relied on travel agents, and I don't know what the state of life is for travel agents, but I would think that there would be a lot of them that would really welcome back, people. So I think this is one of those preferences that if you really want, if you want to learn, it's so easy now because we have the internet. There's so much to learn. But also, I'm just a big believer, if that isn't your interest, just find the best I think what you and Carolyn are providing with JourneyWomen, make sure you're on the list. Obviously, everybody's on the list. I think there's so many great tools out there of solo women's travel. And there's almost always somebody who's just like so excited to plan for the trip. So there's so much power, and it's so empowering to join forces with other women. But I don't see that as a problem. Like, just pay for it if you don't want to do it, or, connect with other women who love doing it. Most of the women in my life love doing it. The research.
Now, everything we've talked about is a lot to take in, but I want everybody to be able to walk away with at least one practical tip or tool that they can put into practice as soon as they walk away from this meeting. So is there anything that you haven't shared that might be useful?
Well, I think of the things that I've said. So whether that's writing in your journal to develop a practice around travel, whether you try to do something like the Worry Fast, whether you just decide I'm going to be curious, or I'm going to I'm going to be very mindful in why I even want to make this trip. So many times we say things like, oh, Australia is on my bucket list. That's great, but why? Why is Australia on your bucket list? Or why are any of these on your bucket list? So just if any of these strategies appeal to you, I just feel everything starts with a small step. So that's, I'm just trying to think if there's anything. There's so many different ones. And I also think because I'm an entrepreneur, I've met so many great people traveling. I've gotten so many clients traveling, sitting next to them on a plane, or talking to them in an airport. And so I also think just having the awareness that for some of you, travel is really your business, like whatever it is in life that you're trying to discover or that you're trying to give the world, your gift. When you travel, it's like a built-in audience, really, if you avail yourself to it. So that's another reason I'd say just, why are you traveling? And does it relate to what you are doing in the world in terms of your business, or you're giving your gift to the world?
Amazing. Now I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that anyone has for Debbie. If you're on camera, put your hand up or type it in the chat, and we can respond to some of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate everybody listening. And yes, I do see somebody. Oh, you were just going like that. Thank you. That's so sweet. Super sweet.
There's a question that was in the chat. Do you think it's best now to travel to a place you've never been, or to a place that you know well?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it's what is your heart's desire? I operate my life by this sentence. What's the love I have to give to the world before I die? And that keeps me really current. And so I'm thinking if you have these two places, and if this were the last trip that you were to make, which one would you rather do? Because, unless you're going to a war, unless you're going to, a country where the government has said, please don't travel to that country, I don't think, you have to worry unless it's like a war-torn country or something. The world is tuned in to COVID. The world is tuned in maybe better than ever. We have so many security measures with our phones that I fear much less for my safety in any country. So if you're going to a country that you just haven't been, but it would be one that if you were to die tomorrow, you were sad you didn't go. It was interesting. My husband and I went to New Zealand, had an amazing time. We came back, had an opportunity to go to Cuba. And it was quick after New Zealand, and we went, and because again, it was a trip we so wanted to go on, and we've been wanting to go for years. And I don't know, 4 months later, my husband was diagnosed with a terminal disease. So I was always so happy that we did those things that we really, really wanted to do, even though sensibly it was like, well, we just came back from New Zealand. We shouldn't be turning around going to Cuba. But that was the one time we made an exception. And now I'm so glad we did. So I hope that answers it. Whoever asked that question, I hope that answers it. Which one would you really want to go to?
And we have another question in the chat, maybe not specifically for you, Debbie, but somebody's asking, does anyone here have a partner who doesn't like to travel? And if so, how do you manage that? Well,
I'll wait till anybody, please raise your hand if that's the case. I've done, because of my work with Donnie Bilo at Girls Guide to Paris, we come upon a lot of women whose partners don't want to travel. And that's all the more important why solo travel. So maybe Amanda, you can speak to this. I think it's so important, even if you have a partner who sometimes likes to travel, but you like to travel more. And I've certainly, with Women on Fire, I've known that to be the case where, sometimes you can get away and your partner might not be able to get away like you can. I think it's important to be connected to a solo woman's group that you can rely on and trust, so that if you do choose to travel, you've got a solo group of women to travel with. So that's how I'd answer that. Amanda, do you have anything to add, or would you say anything differently?
Well, and also just speaking to your partner about what they do like to do. Maybe they don't like international travel, but maybe they like, some domestic adventures, and those you can share together, and then you can travel internationally by yourself or with friends or whatever. But I think it's an open conversation, and perspectives and feelings can change over the years. And I think it's just keeping that dialogue open constantly and seeing what they're okay with, and how okay they are with you being away as much as you would like to be.
Right. That's a really great question, and a really important question. And thank you, what you just added, because it's so common, you guys. It's just really super, super common. I would say in our last trip to Paris, maybe half of the women were married and their partners weren't interested in the trip.
Any other questions for Debbie? Oh, I see a hand up. Holly?
Hi, Amanda. Hi, Debbie. Oh. I'm really enjoying this. This is great.
Thanks.
And Debbie, I know you know this. How do you meet quality men when you travel? Because these are great stories. So what's the secret? We want to know.
I have met some quality men while traveling. It's very interesting. I wish I knew. I wish I knew the formula. But I will tell you, that is so sweet. And by the way, everybody, Holly has been to Japan 35 times in her work. It is a country I still want to go to. She's very, very, very well traveled. She's traveled to many other places, but Japan just happens to be one of her specialties. And she and I have not talked about this story. I think the idea, when you're in an airport, you're pretty safe when you're in an airport. And the notion of really just looking at, if you're single and you're wanting to be in a relationship, it's a pretty cool place, really. You're pretty safe. And, people who are flying are, usually pretty, they're pretty interesting. And I just look at men, and I just look, I just pay attention, and I just stay open. It happened to be funny. The guy I was telling you about, that was just at my shoulder on the wall. That was just too quirky and funny. But I have met a lot of really nice men by just being friendly and open, and always in a safe place. I met an absolutely dazzling guy who asked me out on a date in Paris on the train. He was assigned to sit next to me. And so, I had, again, like a 2-hour amazing trip with some handsome French guy. So, but just being open and just smiling and just being soft and open, but safe, so I hope that answers it. Who here is wanting to travel and find a relationship? Maybe that's a whole course that we teach.
Any other questions for Debbie? I'm gonna switch over to the other screen just to see.
I'm so curious while you're doing that. I'm really curious. Whatever anybody write in the chat. I'd love to know where you want to travel. Like, what's the next country or place? It could be in the U.S. or Canada or wherever you're coming in from today. Where do you want to travel? I just love to see in the chat stream where you want to travel next. Awesome, Costa Rica. Yeah.
Flights are very inexpensive to Costa Rica right now from Canada. At least I went in January. I actually went to Nicaragua, but via Costa Rica because the flights were so much less expensive to Costa Rica than Nicaragua from Canada.
Oh my gosh, this is also fantastic. Julie, cool. That's great. Oh, Nashville's so great. LA is so great. Going to France for a month. Oh, that's so delicious. Saudi Arabia, fantastic. Oh, Morocco. Yes, Malaysia. Beautiful. Love it. Portugal. I know that's on my list. Look at this. This is beautiful. I love seeing this. It's so exciting. Oh, the other Debbie Phillips. Yay. I could go with you on that trip. I love that. Going to the Camino. Oh, everybody who's done the Camino, we've had a number of women on fire do it. They love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. I want to go anywhere, really. I know that is the case. I know it's so great to get back out there. It really feels so good.
Now, Debbie, you're giving a keynote at our Women's Travel Summit in October. Can you give everybody a little preview of what you'll be talking about?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm super excited that we're doing this 4-day retreat in California at this beautiful retreat center. And I'm the opening keynote, and my dear friend, Luong Ung, who is an amazing writer, producer of movies, is going to be the closing keynote. And in between, it's just, there's so many wonderful things planned for all of us. And so what I will be talking about is whenever I speak or what I love sharing with women is I love connecting people to each other. I will be giving the keynote speech on the day that many of you will probably have arrived. And so I'm very aware of how that feels. So we'll probably get up and there'll be a little bit of movement. It'll be a little meditative, but my goal always is that you walk away feeling empowered, feeling safe, feeling comfortable, and meeting at least one other person that you get to know and that you just feel inspired. So that's really, that's kind of what I have planned. But I'm very much about the experience, and I have a sense always of the energy of the group in person, and I really tailor it to that. I've been doing this a long time.
Now, before we sign off, I do want to make an announcement that Carolyn has asked me to make. This year, we want to highlight women in travel who are working behind the scenes to make travel happen. Those would be your guides, your drivers, your accommodation managers, your hoteliers, restaurant staff, airport staff, cooks, or photographers. It's an opportunity to thank them, show our appreciation, and share a meaningful story about how they impacted your travel experience. And I'm just going to pop an article in the chat that explains what we'd like people to do to show our appreciation for people in travel. Just pop in the chat.
What a wonderful thing. That's wonderful.
Sorry, I just need, there we go.
Yeah, Holly says, love the concept. Yeah, me too. Oh my goodness.
Any other last questions for Debbie before we wrap up?
Thanks, everybody who asked the question. That was great. Really appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank Debbie for joining me for this enlightening travel-ready discussion on mindset tonight. I want to thank you, Debbie, for sharing yourself, your stories, and your expert knowledge with us. I know I'm walking away from this hour feeling like I just had to catch up with a girlfriend who shared some valuable advice with me. To our viewers, thank you as always for tuning in and choosing to spend your valuable time with us. If you enjoyed tonight's event and want to show your appreciation by buying us a coffee, I'm going to pop a link to our coffee donation page in the chat as well. So thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. This has been Travel Ready by JourneyWoman, and I've been your host, Amanda Burgess. And thank you again, Debbie, for joining us on the show tonight.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
This was
everyone.
so fun. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
JourneyWoman.